Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Felicia Love. I am the president of Black Women in Radio and also the curator of the Black Women in Radio National Historic Collection. We are so super excited. I'm still flying high from being having an opportunity to be at the White House. We have over 26 Black women from radio who flew here just for this occasion and to go to the White House and meet and greet and do a tour. This is an out-of-body experience. I wanted to do the Black Women in Radio collection because I knew that there was a gap with regard to how Black women in particular are documented in media and especially in radio. And being a woman who's been in the industry in and out for over 30 years, somebody reminded me of that. I was like, you know, you had that 30 years on your resume for a minute. So anyway, it still sounds good, over 30 years. I know that there were some experiences that I experienced, and I wondered if I was alone. For 30 years, that's a long time. But finally, last year and this year, meeting 39 women from all over the country who resonate in the same way that I did with regard to our careers has been so gratifying in regard that I know that I wasn't alone, but it's also very gratifying because we can elevate our voices collectively to tell the world who we are, what our accomplishments have been, and how significant our contributions are to our prospective communities. So I'm so grateful for those Black women in radio who are here. Of the inaugural 39 is 30, but have you noticed I can't count? So I said I've been in radio for 30 years, right? And it's been a few more. And then I have the inaugural 30 who was actually 39, but it just grew, so I couldn't help it. But anyway, the inaugural 30, if you would please stand. We are making history right here, right now. Thank you guys so much. And trust me, they all have super busy schedules, but this was an occasion that they flew in just for this occasion because it is historic as we go, even today. So, to piggyback on that, for those of you who know me, know that I am a busybody and I can't just sit still. So we have another collection, and that's why you are here. We've been able to partner with the Radio Preservation Task Force, and we have collectively put together a committee, a Legends Committee, to reflect not just women, not just minorities, but the fabric of Black radio culture. So if you can imagine, there's a lot that goes into this. And they too have not been championed in the way that they need to, and that's why we're doing a collection. Some of these people that you will hear about, you may not even know, which is my point. That's why we're doing the collection. So I'm going to bring to the stage first our Legends Committee. So I am honored to bring up Skip Dillard, First Lady, Sam Weaver, Dr. Laura Schnickler, is she here? Oh, Laura, yes. I haven't seen her all day. I'm sorry, I'm excited. Laura. Yes, and I'm missing somebody. Karen Turner, is she here? Karen Turner's here as well. Yes. And then me, she's probably getting some refreshment. It has been a long day. But this is our committee, so I was smart enough from the first collection not to do it by myself and have a committee. So you can imagine with this rich tapestry of people here, we are literally going to cover the ground of Black radio culture, how it's developed from the very beginning. And I've got history buffs on this panel, which is so cool. They know things I don't even know. What were you saying, Sam? I'm dating you.
When you said from the beginning of radio, why do you look at me? I don't know if I like
Because you're
that.
one of the history buffs. You and Skip, I mean, I could listen to you all day. I can. You guys, I mean, they just rattle off history. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that. And I've been in the industry, right? So anyway, I bring to you our beautiful panel. Skip's like, what did I get into? Yeah. I bring to you our beautiful panel, and we are first going to talk about why the collection is so significant. I'll give each of you an opportunity, and if you would be so kind to introduce yourself first and tell us why this collection is so significant. We'll start with you, Skip, because I want to pick on you today.
Oh,
You okay with that?
Skip Dillard, I'm the brand manager for 94.7 The Block WXB KFM in New York City. And I think that, just being able to preserve the history that is so rich in culture and the fabric of every community that's been served by a black radio station over the 70 or so years. I think of great call letters when I was a kid going towards college. I remember, reading Black Radio Exclusive. It was in our college library, and just collecting the call letters and radio and records and looking at amazing stations, WDIA in Memphis and WVEE Atlanta. If you named a city, I could tell you a station that was in it. WJLB in Detroit. Many of our defunct great black radio stations, WERD in Atlanta, and when you look at WRKS FM in New York, and some of the great talents that flowed through the industry. It's so important that we do document, because black radio is so much a fabric of black history, period, from the first days of the technology. And, just in talking to Hal Jackson when I arrived at Inner City in 2008, and when I worked at Billboard before that, listening to his stories about his challenges of getting, into the industry. And, his most famous story was he owned, at the time, kind of the Negro Leagues before basketball, before the NBA became integrated, and he had the Washington Bears here in the district, and he would call the games himself. And someone mentioned you should get into radio, and he went to a station here in Washington, D.C., and his name was Harold B. Jackson. So naturally, the general manager probably thought he did not look like who Hal Jackson looked like. And when he came through to interview, there was a grin when he walked out of the office, and then he said, "Look, come on in the office, let me talk to you." And he said, "I'm going to save you a lot of time, I'm going to save you a lot of energy. There's not going to be any coloreds on the air in Washington, D.C. ever." and that really was the spark that brought Hal Jackson to buy time at a little station, AM in Annapolis, Maryland. And he was number one in his little time slot, a couple hours on a weekend he could afford. And DC wound up calling him back, and instead of him just, buying time, he got paid. And that was what started for him, such a determination to remember and tell the history, passed it down to me and so many countless others that had a chance to work with him. So this is a very, wonderful, wonderful effort. And I thank Felicia for taking the challenge.
So I don't know how to follow that, but to say ditto what he said. My name is First Lady, radio personality for many years, now station owner of a digital radio station called Jam 98. Shameless plug, download the app. We do not segregate the music because we are all one, and music is what unites us. So I just wanted to get that shameless plug out there. But the one thing that I thought when Felicia first said this to me about the Legends Collection was that it was important for those that are going to be, like Summer, the young lady Summer, for those that are going to be coming up after her to really know what the history is, because I spent some time teaching at a broadcasting school, and the information that they give, it starts with the very first broadcast being something, Christmas music to the soldiers, but it really didn't speak about radio from the standpoint of how personalities came to be, what programming is about, who were the programming stars that made up the rules as to why you hear music the way you do. That's very important. That type of stuff should be documented, not to mention the fact that every city, and each one of us, we all grew up listening to somebody. But I don't know who your person is. You don't know who my person is. But those people, he talked about Hal Jackson. I got a chance to work with him. But I also had a chance to work with Herb Kent, who is our man in Chicago. But in D.C., they have a man. In Memphis, they have a man. So those people need to be documented so that we can all share in that rich history. And not just black people, because there were a lot of people in the Latino community that also contributed. One of my personal favorites, Irene Mojica. Irene Mamacita Mojica, when you heard her on the air, it was just like, it didn't matter that she was not black. She was accepted in the community. And so she played a part in shaping the lives of listeners in the Chicagoland area. And every single solitary city has a person like that. And their stories deserve to be documented. So that's why I think it's important.
Hello, hello, hello. Hi, I'm Laura Schnitger. I'm an ethnomusicologist, I'm an audiovisual archivist, and I'm also a DJ, and I work at the University of Maryland. I'm the curator of the Mass Media and Culture Broadcast Archive, and I host a weekly show on WMUC-FM, our campus radio station. And for me, I guess I came at this topic just as a fan of Black music. It was a big part of my dissertation research, and when I started looking into radio history, I was a little bit bewildered that there wasn't very much written about Black voices in radio. And I initially thought when I wrote my dissertation, I'm gonna write the book on Black radio. And I realized William Barlow already did that, so, and some of you may have heard of his work, it's very well known. What is it, Voice Over, the story of Black radio. It's excellent, very comprehensive historiography of Black radio. And what fascinated me about it as an ethnomusicologist is just how seminal those Black DJs were in the late 1940s and 50s in disrupting and reinventing narratives about popular music. And I love that chapter in radio history. And as an archivist, I want to do everything I can to make sure that archival materials document Black voices and Black radio in a more equitable way. So I'm here, I think, for my archival expertise as well as the research I've done into the history of Black radio, and it's an honor to be included.
Hello. How are you? That's it? Tell you what, before I say anything, it's something I want you. Everybody hold up your cell phone. Let me see your cell phones. Hold them up. Everybody up with the cell phone. Let me see. Come on, you got a cell phone. I'll wait. I'll wait. Come on, you know you have your cell phone. Lift it up. Okay. This is what I want you to do. Okay? I want you, because I love to just, I just do this all at one time, and this, I love the vibrations of this, to be honest about it. Everybody with your cell phones, I want you to put in your name right now and your cell number. Well, I'll obviously have the cell number. I'm going to give you my number, okay? My number is 972-672-4812. I'll say it again. Pause. 972. Oh, he just got his cell phone out. Oh, my, come on, man. There's always one, isn't there? 972-672-4812. What I want you to do is to, on the count of 5, first put your name in there, obviously, title, whatever, so I know who you are. Like Patty Jackson, hello. I know she's in here. Okay. On the count of 5, just text it to me. I just love the feel of it, to be honest about it. You have no clue. What, see, you did that too fast. I know it was you because you looked at me. Put your name. My name is Sam Weaver. Thank you, Helen. I appreciate that, Helen. Helen Little, ladies and gentlemen. Helen Little. Sam Weaver. That's me. That's my name. SAMWEAVER. And on the count of 5, just text it to me. Some people can't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Text. 972 672 4812. Thank you, Tammy Mack. I appreciate
Just
that.
a warning, he may call you back after 9 p.m., so you want to mute your phone. Sam will call you late, man. Hey, you still up, Skip? I am now.
Okay, did you say? I don't know if no, there's some more texts. Here they come. They're coming on. Oh my God, you have no idea how this feels. Oh man, that's why I'm going to keep it in my hand. I'm keeping it. Yeah, I know, Helmut. You know me, so I won't say that. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. I wish you could. Can you feel this? Can you feel? Is that not incredible? Mm-hmm. Either that or somebody's calling me. Oh. I appreciate it. I am Sam Weaver, and this stuff is important. Why? Because when I Google your name, I want to be able to find you someday. Literally. We're really not cataloged. And it's black air personalities and black radio. I separate the two because a lot of black radio personalities not only have worked in black radio, but they've always worked also in other formats. You know? Somebody said something to me recently I thought was so funny. It says, well, you know, NPR needs to da-da-da. I go, okay, NPR has more black air personalities than you know about. You're going by what you think you're going to hear versus what you think they should sound like. And they said, what? And I started showing pictures. Oh, okay. It's really kind of funny. But anyway, I am the urban and R&B editor and columnist at All Access. And if you go back in years, how many people in here remember Radio and Records? How many? Okay. Well, this is the online Radio and Records. This is the online urban network, or Network 40. And we've been around since 1995. In fact, a third of the staff, maybe more than a third of the staff, used to be at Radio and Records, or the others used to work at Album Network. You know? But this is important. It has to be documented, or else we won't be remembered. Because there are other people that want to do things. Other people want to be a Helen Little, or a Tony Gray, or a Ken Johnson, or a Carol Carper. Hello, Carol. Yeah, or a Skip Dillard, or a First Lady, or this lady. I forgot her name, that's why. That was a radio thing. You see how I did that? Yeah, thank you.
I was just gonna say, let them off the hook and let them know who you are. You're telling them, put your number in, and they're like,
Oh, I'm doing it on purpose.
All access.
Yeah. I know, it worked.
Yeah.
I got that right, didn't I?
For a reason.
Oh, that's right. And this is my card. Thank you.
I'm so glad, yes.
No, I was just going to say, to piggyback off of what Sam said, it's also important because if you don't document, if the history's not documented, someone else will say they did it.
Yeah.
And then those who know will be so upset because someone stole your history. I'm sorry. They put their name on the work you did. Nobody likes that. So it's things like this, what Felicia is spearheading, that will make it possible that no one can steal your history, your work. And it gets done. It gets done in the music industry, and it gets done in the radio industry. So, and in so many other industries. So this is our opportunity to step up and do it. So again, I thank you so very much because nobody, all these years, nobody else thought to do it.
Thank you so much. Karen Turner, another committee member. I think we're going to need a chair. We'll get you a chair, Karen. Oh, there is. Very good. Karen Turner, professor at Temple University, is another one of our committee members. I'm going to let her get settled and then allow her to introduce herself as well. But so you see that we've got a lot of ground to cover, right? And you see the significance of putting this collection together. The other part of it is, like I said earlier, it's not just about minority people. It is about the tapestry of Black radio. And I think once we get this collection together, everyone will be in awe of what we've been able to accomplish up to this moment. So what I want to ask each of you, who do you believe to be a legend and why? And I'm talking, we want to span this from your career only. Of course, we're going to dig a little deeper later.
Yeah, I mean, there were many in my career, definitely. You know, Tony Gray was one of the earliest PDs who turned consultant that I met very, like almost as soon as I got out of Hampton University. He would be one. From listening to tapes and visiting New York City after we left Queens. I mean, Frankie Crocker, I think I was a huge fan, though, of Jerry Bledsoe, who was on many of the Budweiser commercials as a kid growing up, and seeing someone that looked like me and looked a lot more handsome than I do up there, you know, just getting on the microphone and late at night, you know, and the commercials with all the ladies in the studio. It was somebody you just saw as a picture of class, always well dressed. But there were many. Verna Green, who was my GM at WMXD in Detroit and had a legacy with WJLB all those years. She taught me a ton about management. So there's so many. Jim Snowden from KMJQ and Houston fame. He gave me my first PD job in New Orleans. And so, you know, and there are many others. Dr. Jerry Bolding, who passed a few years ago, would call me all the time, and it was a blessing to talk to him. Frankie Crocker, I ran his gospel show. He had a little syndicated gospel show. I ran it in New Orleans, so he would call me once a month. So having, you know, those people consistently just talking to you, quite amazing. Charles Warfield, who was president of Inner City and ran, was in records for a while, actually, at Universal Music. He was one I would consider a mentor. Dion Livingston, who brought me to New York as a general manager. But there were countless others, but those are just a few of the many. And of course, you know, we can talk about the Hal Jacksons, the Jack Gibsons, the Jack the Rapper. You know, there's so many, and so many women as well. Bo Griffin, who died a few years ago from Miami. I mean, she was one of the best DJs I ever heard, and was amazing. And there are so many, I can't even go into more names. Let someone else talk.
That's an awesome start.
You mean from
Your career. Legends that stand out in your career.
Where to start? I think I would start with Lee Michaels, who was the first person that believed in me and put me on the air on GCI as a female mixer, making me the first female mixer on the radio in Chicago. He also was the person that opened the door for me to even understand what radio was about. So I got to hang out and around Tom Joyner and Doug Banks and Yvonne Daniels and Chili Childs and Irene Mojica and learn from them, to be in the studio and learn how they did what they did. I wanted to be in TV. I thought I was going to be an actress. But when I got in there, and it was another young lady, Bonnie DeShong, who did the traffic. And her whole thing was saying, hey, baby. And she's one of the Inaugural 30. But she was my acting teacher. And she told me, you got your foot in the door in radio, you should continue. And she would mentor me. Even though she was just in traffic, she still had something to contribute. And as I went on, I met people like Tony Gray. Tony Gray taught me something very important. The music is the star. What you do in between the music is, you know, icing on the cake. But the music is the star. I never forgot that. Elroy Smith, I can't, all that I learned from him, from watching him, just a legend still. Barry Mayo was the very first person to give me a contract at 106 Jams in Chicago. The very first person that sat me down and said, listen, these are the rules. And if you follow the rules, you'll be okay. If you don't follow the rules, well, you won't be okay. And he was right. If you don't follow the rules, you're not going to be okay. I'm here to tell you that. So he was very influential. Then you had people like Don Cornelius. You know, people only think of him from Soul Train, but he was a legend in Chicago radio. The Good Guys from WVON. These are all people, Lucky Cordell, that shaped the fabric. The voice of the Negro was heard all the way across the country because it was AM. So these are things that it was still a part of my history because I'm a child of the 60s, so I grew up hearing them, and they shaped my mind, what I was hearing. So those would be some of my people. And I would be remiss without saying one of my
Godfather.
favorite, Kathy Hughes. Most definitely
yes,
is a
absolutely.
legend. Her story is one that is pushing me forward in radio ownership, because there are not enough black women owning radio stations, whether it's terrestrial or digital. So definitely following her story and thinking about what it took to get out there and do that. So for me, that would be some of the ones.
And you
like
mentioned
Skip, I'm
your-
going to pass the mic.
You mentioned your godfather a moment ago, but
Herb Kent?
it's worth saying again.
Oh, most definitely. Herb Kent.
Yes, legends. Okay, Laura.
So my experience was a little different. I didn't grow up with black radio. I did watch a lot of black TV, and some of my earliest memories were Morgan Freeman as Easy Reader on Electric Company. I loved him.
Oh, gosh, yes.
But I grew up in a suburb of the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and if there were black voices on the radio in the 80s when I was growing up, I wasn't really hearing them. But I can say that one of my favorite historical figures, and this is somebody that I teach my class about. So I teach a class for the School of Music at Maryland called World Popular Musics and Identity. And we spend a week doing radio history, because you can't talk about popular music without talking about radio history. And I devote a good chunk of time to those black DJs. And I teach them about Al Benson, who I'm sure many of you know was a preacher from Mississippi, and he went up to Chicago and he got a job in radio, and he was just unabashedly himself when he was on the air, and also played some fantastic music. So he's in my lecture, he's also on my midterm, and I love that when my students leave my class, they know who he was.
Very good. Thank you so much. Perspectives are everything. We can't have a wholesome collection without different perspectives, so I love that. Karen.
Well, my perspective is a little different as well, because my experience in radio was more the news end. But I remember growing up and actually became very interested in radio and black radio listening to Mary Mason in Philadelphia. I guess in terms of maybe during my time, I have to give props to Jim Hutchinson, because Jim gave me my first job. I was in law school at Northwestern, and he owned a little station in Gary, Indiana. And he gave me my first opportunity there, even though I went on and did more news in terms of, but worked at black stations at WIZF, which I do have to talk about all the time, because at WIZF, we were doing like morning show kinds of things with the personality, you know, the female news personality, and then Lincoln Ware. And I remember that there was some pushback from management about, what are you doing talking to one another? What's this personality
Female,
radio
yeah,
stuff, right? And then, of course, that's what we want today, right? People want to know about you. But I guess in terms of, like I said, people I want to give my props to, and it was Jim Hutchinson who brought me to WIZF, the Wiz. And so he's definitely been a constant in my life when I was more active in radio. And now I've been teaching journalism at Temple University and really trying to educate my students about the beauty of radio. And it's
hard.
a challenge today, because people want to do podcasts, and that's fine. But everything isn't TV, and I too wanted at first to get into television, and discovered radio. And I think the more young people who are exposed to it, the more they will love it. And I'm hoping that through archiving and telling our stories, and I think we need to encourage younger people to think about going into those kinds of careers, because that's also getting lost.
Yes, very good. Thank you. How about you, Sam?
All these Chicago folks.
Yeah, well, and props to the Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Because I lived in Chicago during the time of Harold Washington.
Harold Washington.
Right?
And I was right there too.
Yeah.
We were talking about that. Anyway, let's see. For me, oh man, it's a lot of folks. Dr. Jerry Bolding. Yes. The good doctor. Jolly Jerry B, as he was when he was a personality.
Yeah.
But Jerry was amazing, from programming to as an air talent, as just a journalist of this business with Urban Network. Also helping to start out Black Radio Exclusive. And he said that I always had to go, Black Radio? Oh, yeah, BRE. Okay? Other air personalities. For me, we talked about WDIA in Memphis. Well, that was my first programming job. And the people I came in contact with, to this day, I still can't believe it. One face, I been there for 2 weeks, and I'm downstairs when they actually had like mail slots so you can get messages. I look across, and it's Rufus Thomas. Anybody here remember Rufus Thomas, the singer?
The dog, Thomas.
And I looked over, I said, Rufus. He goes, mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. I thought, and I found out he was my weekend person. I already knew most of my staff. It was amazing to be there at DIA. And they had a gentleman in the morning there by the name of A.C. Williams. See, people get confused sometimes. Nate Williams, right? Correct me, Skip. One of the first people to be heard for, doing a black radio show with black music and so forth, whatever, at DIA. But A.C. Williams, this gentleman, his nickname was Muha, who was like 6'5". He was instrumental in so much in Memphis. Not only was he on the radio, he also wrote songs. Like a lot of people, that Memphis, the Stax, and the music thing, a lot of it was interchangeable. Muha was amazing. When I got to Chicago, his name would pop up because WDIA was a 100,000 watt flamethrower. And in the Delta, everybody heard Muha. Rick Dees was in that market. Everybody know that name, Rick Dees? Muha kicked his butt in ratings. That's why I was glad to hear Big Sue talk about what DIA was today. It was huge back then. And it gave me a valuable lesson, the most important lesson, 2 lessons. One, sales department is kind of important. I had come from a company that, well, it's a long story. And the other part was what they did in the community. They drove kids to school. That was that part when black radio had to be the community, because you had like black radio and you had Jet Magazine and later Ebony Magazine. That's all you had. Yeah. AC was huge. There was another guy there named Honey Boy Thomas. These guys at this station were like in the Delta, they were legendary people. Another guy, Theo Wade, who actually sang with Sam Cooke when Sam did gospel, believe it or not. So this was one of my first educations as, like a programmer, and these people were working for me, and I found out something else that time. Those who were older would listen, the younger guys didn't so much. I thought that was interesting. But other people, Ken Webb in New York, oh my God. Whoa. The name, there was a guy, I've only talked to one person who remembers this guy. His name was Steve Bird. Anybody, you remember? Tony, he could talk real fast and very clear. I think he wound up working in Baltimore eventually. And a gentleman recently that I actually worked with, and it was funny, I was at NABOB a few months ago here in D.C., and this guy kept asking questions, and I'm talking, and I made jokes like, well, yeah, for an honorarium, I will come and speak to your class. I threw that out there again.
We have to have fun while we're doing the collection.
Okay, no problem.
We have to have some fun.
Okay. I love how she said, we don't pay. But it turns out his real name, his air name was Boogeyman, and he worked in St. Louis. Well, it's Dr. Thomas, and he's asking questions, and I'm not noticing until we got in the hallway. We start talking. I go, oh, yeah, you're from where? And I looked again, and he looked at me and went, wait a minute, we work together. So not only did I listen to him, I'd work with him. Names like that. I mean, the folks that used to come through with Tom Joyner. Tom had just come off the air when I started working at JPC in Chicago. That same year was a weird time. All this stuff's going on. Tom was the first host of Jet Celebrity Showcase, Ebony Jet Celebrity Showcase. He was the first host. His office was still on the floor. Meanwhile, Harold Washington was running for mayor at the same time. Had some folks that were involved with the campaign. It was nuts at the Johnson Building. It was wonderful though, you know. So Tom was doing that, and we would see anybody and everybody come through that building. You name it, we saw it. It was amazing. I'm sorry, I'm scattering off as I think of names. I see all these faces. Bill Bailey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or from Bill Bailey to Richard Piggy. Unfortunately, that's how his voice. But he was a wonderful radio person. You know, everybody in this room has people they grew up with listening to. You know, like if I was to ask Helen, what was one of your favorite people? Who was it? Okay, two.
Growing up?
Yeah.
Or just period?
Oh, either one. Oh, you're
Obviously Quincy McCoy.
Quincy McCoy. I forgot Quincy. Yes.
I mean, working afternoon drive with Frankie Crocker is like
Wow.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I grew up listening to some pretty cool women. Kitty Kinnon was a rock AOR jock, and later on smooth jazz, and I just love the way she sounds.
What city?
Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
And then Sandy, no last name, was on WQMG, and I wanted to sound just like both of them.
Kitty Neely in Chicago.
Yeah.
Chili Childs was my favorite. And Yvonne Daniels was outstanding. Yeah. So yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, we could go down and ask people, and we'll hear all
Literally,
sorts
and
of
do
names.
research now. I totally
Oh,
agree
they're all
with you.
through in this
Totally
house.
could.
Like Sue. She loved. Who did you listen to out of curiosity?
Actually, I had three. It's really interesting because Skip is here. So when I got into hip-hop radio, one of the first that I was listening to was Wendy Williams because PLS was
that's right,
the first to stream.
Yeah.
So I would start, and I was in afternoon drive as a woman, so I would actually come into the station, I would, knock out scheduling music, and I would listen to about the first hour and a half of Wendy's show before mine started.
What city were you?
Memphis.
You were in Memphis.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, which was on, and then for the same reason, Angie Martinez and world famous Kylan Hunt. Kylan was on WDIA and K97 in Memphis. He passed away a few years ago, but he just had a very magical conversational style, and he could get anybody to open up to him.
Wow.
Incredible.
Is anybody writing these names down?
I hope so.
Is somebody? Is
We
there
are
somebody
being
writing this-
recorded.
Felicia, I forgot to
We don't
mention the
forget.
name.
We are being.
I forgot to
Bobby
mention.
OJ.
Yeah.
Oh, Bobby O. Oh yeah, the late.
Yes.
Oh wow.
That's what I thought Big Sue would say too, but it's such a long list.
I forgot to mention, for example, it wasn't someone I listened to. I did listen, but she was on the radio. But she was important as an owner, Mildred Carter, the Carter Broadcasting Company, okay, in Kansas City. They had a gentleman named Chris King who retired after 35 years on the air there. Chris King was amazing. You know, he's the guy that listened. I came in one time and said, Chris, you are such a wealth of information. One problem. He said, what's that? I said, you got to start talking. You got to learn about these other artists that you're not saying anything about the hip hop artists. You know what he did? He agreed. He went and learned. He became better versed about a lot of the acts than the younger jocks at the radio station. That taught me a lot. And I'm also proud to say that not only did I program at WDIA, the oldest black operated station,
Kansas.
right? I also programmed KPRS, the oldest black owned, currently the oldest black owned and operated station. And I looked, I'm the only one that's ever done that.
Ta-da!
Hey, I lucked out. They had a job. Thank God Tony Gray said, Sam, you need to get to Kansas City.
Karen?
Yeah, I
Share, Sam, share.
just wanted to add, as we're talking about personalities, I think it is very important to talk about programmers and owners. And need to say something about Mr. Lewis, who
yes,
did
yes,
own
yes,
stations. When we were at Cincinnati, he owned a station in St. Louis, in New Orleans, WYLD, of course, and then in Savannah.
Yep, absolutely,
And so,
absolutely.
and these are names and people who may have gone on, their businesses may have gone on as well, but I think just in terms of archiving our history, I think it's very important to remember those who who set a stage upon which so many of us are building.
Yes, absolutely. Totally agree.
And also, I think one of the things that we had talked about, including what, besides personalities and programming, is also sales. Because that's a big part of how Black radio continued, is somebody's got to pay the light bill, somebody's got to pay the jocks. So they're a very important part. Promotions, they're legendary promotions people, they're legendary salespeople. There are legendary GMs. One for me would be Marv Dyson, who I met Marv, he had a full fro. I mean, a full Dr. J fro. And I worked with him all the way until he was less hair than this. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But
Skip's gonna get you.
I'm sorry. But you get where I'm
He's
going.
so gonna get you.
Get it?
Yeah. Well, Marv is actually bald, but I'm sorry, Skip.
You're not making it
You're
any
still my
better,
friend.
First Lady.
I'm still your friend.
But,
She's thinking.
because you had those general managers that, his brother was on the air, Lon Dyson, but Marv was not on the air as he was the GM. He did his job, but he challenged us as air personalities to get out into the community. So did Elroy. So did Lee Michaels. They made sure that we were out in the community because it was the community that was keeping us going. And so that is not the way radio is now in a lot of major cities. And I don't know if that's because some of the legendary people have now retired, but these companies or these big companies just don't see the value in our communities. But as future legends, it's going to be our jobs to look at what the legends laid out for us and to continue that path. And if you don't know who the legends are, because a legend in Memphis did something that somebody that is on their way to being a legend in Chicago could see and say, you know what, we need to take that blueprint and put it over here. We need to take this blueprint and put it over here. That's the whole, the whole purpose of documenting is so that we can learn and not necessarily to repeat, but to improve. And again, thank you for doing this. But that's so very important. And people like that are important because some people don't want to be a jock their whole life. Right. And they need to know what else is out there.
Yes.
Again, doing the news, Lou Palmer, Ann Tripp, doing the news.
Is Ann here?
She'll be back in 3.
Okay. Yeah.
You might not care about the news, but the person delivering it is so engaging that you can't help to pay attention to the information that's being given. And for our community, that's what we need. So those people are so very important. I'm not going to say that they might be legendary receptionists, but I mean,
I think
but
people
you get
who
the
had
point.
receptionists would definitely say that they are the gatekeepers.
Yes,
I don't
they
think
are.
we're going to cover them, but perhaps some of the some management might mention them, and there you go, they're in the collection that easy.
Right.
But the other reason why this is so important is because when radio stations turn over, station owners change management, whatever the case may be. I'm going to let you guys mention it. Skip, what happens to all of that documented audio? What usually happens?
It's not only audio, it's memorabilia, it's everything. Radio in general has done a very poor job of chronicling its history. You have the Paley Center for Media in New York City and a few others that attempt to preserve a lot of the history, but there many private collections, other things get tossed. I mean, WBLS and LIB moved several times throughout the history, once during my time there when it moved from 3 Park Avenue to the West Village, and before that it was at 801 2nd Avenue near the UN. And it was, tragic to see, how much we lost. I mean, you only have so much room at home that you can take stuff. I got what I could when we moved from 3 Park. At BLK in Buffalo, I remember going to a garbage dumpster to grab a notebook of old BLK playlists from the 70s.
Wow.
And they sold advertising, so it was cool seeing Curtis Mathis TVs, $399. And, Aretha Franklin, One Night Only, and all the blaxploitation movie ads that were there, The Hammer and all that. And so, having some of that stuff preserved is great. And not only that, a lot of the musical memorabilia.
Oh,
you know, I mean, I cherish photos I had early in my career as a kid with Roger Troutman, you know, people that are no longer with us. And so, you know, radio, especially black radio, you know, when companies are being sold, they're moving, they're not going to spend a ton of money to have storage spaces. They're not going to, you know, have, you know, anyone to categorize what they have. You know, I remember at one point BLS had framed most of its commercials that it had done over the years. They would take physical photos on TV sets, and I don't know where any of that stuff is today. A lot of artwork that painters, you know, did paintings of Percy Sutton. I think some of that is back with the family, some not. And so we have to do a better job of not just the written, but, you know, also pictures, video. Hal Jackson's Talented Teens, I know Debbie Jackson has them, but they're on like 3/4-inch tapes, and you would have to spend a ton to digitize, but we got to figure out how we digitize that. And she told me, she said, anytime we come to the garage and get it and digitize it. I was
Laura,
like, well,
did you hear
know,
that?
Yeah, you know, get a
Yay.
U-Haul, but those are things that we can do a better job of.
We definitely will. Also, there is the music, just like Skip mentioned. So there will be some artists threaded in throughout the collection with regard to personal relationships. So I think that that would bring a richer story to the collaboration between the owner or personality and, you know, the artist. So that's how we'll do that. Also, there's audio. So we are looking for any audio, like Skip said. And lastly, the oral histories, because without the oral histories, just right now, we are giving an oral history of Black radio culture. So that will be documented along with those people who are part of the Legends collection. So there are a couple here today. I will say today is the official launch of the Legends collection, and these are the people that are going to help make it possible. Give them the hand. Good work to be done. Now, there are some other people. Yes, Super Cindy? No.
If we have a legend that we feel definitely needs to be included.
You know I'm going to ask. That's part of research.
Or you can
Girl,
call
yeah, I
me.
got you. We're going to ask. I'm definitely
Or
going to do
Skip
some
or any of
research
us
that
up
way.
here.
Yes.
That's true. You got my number. You can text me. That's correct. Thank you, First Lady.
I hope you guys are documenting this comedy
She's
show.
my
you got
press
going
agent
on.
now. First Lady, you will be my press agent. Thank you. Text Sam. That's going to be it. Ooh.
He said, ooh.
Venmo, yes. All of it.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to say to all the luminaries that Felicia asked to stand up a little while ago, all of you ladies who are going to be legends, no one is going to save your histories for you, so please document your careers as they happen. Record your radio shows, save your correspondences, save the photos, save everything. If you don't, it will end up in a dumpster.
Ooh, that's a sad
So
story.
please, yes.
Thank you, Laura.
Once again, text 972 67. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Hey, from the peanut gallery over here, okay? These are legends. I'm just here with them. Helen Little.
Yes.
Yes. You know what I'm really going to do?
What do you-
This,
you have to ask me a
honestly,
question.
I'm going to ask you a question. Helen, you're still busting on me all the time. Why do you do that to me? It's because I never get to the point. I know. I'm sorry. Look, what we're actually going to do, we're going to share stories because these people are just a treasure trove of information and stories are kind of cool. That's how you get names and stuff. Now, basically introduce yourself as we go along. And what I want to know is, you mentioned somebody that you grew up listening to in Greensboro. I want everybody here to give me at least one person that you yourself just love to listen to and why and what that meant to you.
Okay, again, my name is Helen Little. I grew up in North Carolina, and I liked listening to I like listening to this woman, Kitty Kennan, on the radio, because one, I didn't hear a lot of women on the radio, and she was on at night, and she was smooth. And she knew the music, and she didn't sound overly smoky, sexy, or overly cute. She just was real. She was genuine. And I eventually got a chance to meet her and tell her how much she influenced me, which to me was a great reward. We both ended up working in the Raleigh market together, and I ran into her, and I'm like, I don't want to make you feel like you're old or anything, but I grew up listening to you, and you have a lot to do with why I'm in radio now.
Was there anything, did she have a catchphrase or something she did special that stood out to you?
I don't remember. I mean, I don't remember specifically. It was really the way she sounded and how I felt like I was in the room with her. The connection and the engagement.
Got it. Got it. Okay, Diane, you're on.
Well, first and foremost, I want to say good afternoon to everyone. In the words of Sly and the Family Stone, everybody is a star.
Yes.
We all have our unique shine and our own distinct contributions to ourselves, to our families, to our friends, to one another as part of the human population. I'm so proud to know Felicia Love. I call her Lady Love. I sent her the John Lucien song that she had never heard before. I said, you have your own theme music now. So I want to say that first and foremost. For me, I grew up in the Bronx and Harlem, and the first woman that I heard consistently on the radio was on WLIB FM before WBLS, before the change, and then on WBLS, and her name is Vi Higginson. Vi Higginson was on the air. Many people know her from her work with Mama I Want to Sing, the play about her sister Doris Troy. But when I heard Vi Higginson, very much like you, Helen, oh, and I'm Deanna Williams, okay, in Philadelphia now. But when I heard Vi had a very warm, familiar style. It felt like she was in your living room or in your bedroom, and she wasn't overly sexy or anything like that, but she was fuzzy and warm and made you feel like the sun was just setting on you. She just has a great voice. So Vi Higginson, for me, was the first woman that inspired me, and it took me 30 years to meet her. Before I had the opportunity to meet her, I was hosting an event in Harlem, and she was one of the honorees. So when I got the gig, I was like, wow, I get to meet, finally, Vi Higginson and let her know that she was my inspiration for so long. I'm currently celebrating 50 years being on air. I started, God is good. I started in New York on WBAI, and a wonderful gentleman, which was Pacifica listener-supported radio. And in college, I went to the City College of New York in Harlem on 138th and Convent. But a gentleman who helped me in my career was Van J. McDuffie. He was on WRVR, which was the straight-ahead jazz station. And while I was doing my studies at City College, I would listen to him. He was on late nights. And I called him one day and I said, I'm going to be on the radio, and I want to come see what you do because I listened to you on the regular. I was a very confident 18-year young woman. And I was on the radio station at our school, WCCR, which was a carrier current station. And I said, but I don't get coffee. I just need you to know I'm not a go get coffee girl. And he did my first air check, which I sent to black radio stations. We had to go to the library and find the addresses of stations. And the gentleman who gave me my opportunity, who I call his name all the time, is Bob Nighthawk Terry. Those of you who may have seen the movie Talk to Me, he was the gentleman in the film, one of the friends of Petey Green, and a legend here in Washington, D.C. radio back in the early 70s. And then the gentleman who gave me my return to my hometown, Frankie Crocker, who Skip and several other people have mentioned. Frankie Crocker hired me, and life changed just like, and Helen and I have this in common, and we've talked about, we bring up Frankie's name frequently because I consider him the dean of black radio. And at WBLS is where I got to be mentored by Hal Jackson, who also Skip mentioned, one of the early black radio personalities And then in that period of time, I got to meet Jocko Henderson in Philadelphia, Georgie Woods, the guy with the goods, Mary Mason, who First Lady mentioned, and Jimmy Bishop as well, who was also a producer. He produced Barbara Mason, and so many others, but between New York and Philadelphia and DC. And finally, my best friend, who I met when I was 19, hired by Bob Terry and John Paul Simpkins at 96.3 WHUR. And she sends her regards. She couldn't be with us today, but my best friend, Kathy Hughes, my biggest influence. And we're not for Kathy Hughes. So many people, Helen and I were talking about that this morning. I said to her recently, I said, not only did you employ broadcasters on the air, but all, like First Lady said, the people behind the scenes in sales, because her background was sales and she was about money, and also all the families that she supported through being an owner of her company is Urban One. It was Radio One. It's still Radio One, but Urban One with her son, Alfred Ligon. So for me, those are the primary people. And I know you asked for one, but I had to go and mention all the others because these were significant people who helped me. Now I'm on the air on an all-talk radio station in Philadelphia that has been owned by a black family. And it is an honor to do talk. So, I feel like if you're a broadcaster and you love it, because I love radio. I have little antennas in my veins. And so WURD-FM is the station, and it was owned by the Lomax. It's still owned by the Lomax family. So it is an honor to use the microphone to super serve the community in the dissemination of information and inspiration.
Thank you. My name is Carol Carper. Growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, it was mostly guys on the radio, to my recollection. The old guys like Donnie Soulfinger Brooks, Alvin Helen's Baby Boy Waples, Bernie Hayes, Lou Father Times, Donnie Soulfinger Brooks. We had one lady, Tiffany, but also being in St. Louis, depending on how the wind would blow, I could hear Chicago radio and those melodious tones of Yvonne Daniels. That just blow me away, and I wasn't even thinking about radio then. My mind was totally somewhere else. Actually, I got into radio at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. Today also represents a kind of watershed moment because I met this lady here and Sheila Eldridge and Gwen Franklin. We were working at the college radio station. My girlfriend said, oh, let's go to Howard. They got a Howard Communications Conference. Well, everybody knew Howard had more than just a radio station. They were taking on the big boys, competing with the real deal. This wasn't college radio station. They were taking money out of WOL and those DC stations. So to come up here and then be able to meet other sisters and have a friendship, and the fact that we all went into media was more than a notion. I mean, that's been a really wonderful ride. I came to appreciate a lot of the radio history through Jerry Bolding, who was a very good mentor of mine. Coming out of college, I don't know why I mistakenly assumed that everyone in radio went to college. No way, that was not the case at all. But he had a way of, he just made the history of radio come alive. And by making it come alive, as a student of a HBCU, I sought to know my history. I wanted to know who I was representing. And I was very determined in that aspect because I figured as long as they weren't shooting water hoses at me or sicking dogs on me, then I was determined to pursue forthright and put the community forefront to do what we needed to do.
As a newscaster, what stations?
WESL East St. Louis, KXLW Katy St. Louis, KKSS, And then I moved to Los Angeles, where I had the privilege to work with Hal Jackson when Inner City Broadcasting bought KGFJ and Cute, also with Frankie Crocker and K-Day. So my influences has been many. And then through Jerry Bolding and Black Radio Exclusive, I was given the opportunity to document a lot of our radio history through Black Radio Exclusive. You know, sometimes timing has everything to do with your opportunity. Like your mama used to say, every opportunity, be ready. So I happened to be working LA radio when Black Radio Exclusive needed someone to document Black radio. I wrote cover stories on Lee Michael, Barry Mayo. The list is numerous. So I was able to begin to see radio from a whole nother perspective, not just the marketplace where I was broadcasting, but now from a nationwide perspective, because these magazines covered Black radio from a nationwide perspective. So after working with BRE for like 5 or 6 years, I had no clue that eventually Jerry would give birth to the Urban Network, and that set me on a 20-year trajectory of us having the biggest, baddest Black music conference in the country, all because we stayed focused on our mission and stayed true to the point.
Thank you. That was great. And it's true.
Thank you.
What I want to do before I move on to Tony, Helen, I forgot to do this. Would you please tell the people the places you worked at and where you currently are at?
Y'all got a minute?
On the air and programming.
I started in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I went to UNC, and I did not work at the college radio station. I answered an ad in the newspaper for a radio host, no experience necessary, and I got my first job at WCHL in Chapel Hill. From there, I went to WSTP and WRDX FM in Salisbury, North Carolina, which is my hometown. So WCHL, WSTP were both adult contemporary. WRDX was country. The station I worked at after that, I was working record retail, and I got a part-time job. No, I got actually a full-time job at WGIV in Charlotte, which was my first time working in Black radio, and I was the receptionist. So, Felicia, where'd she go?
She does.
Oh, well, anyway, you can put some receptionists in your Legends thing if you want to. But I was a lousy receptionist. I would, the phone would ring, and I'd be sitting there, and the general manager would come out. Are you going to answer that? I'm like, how? I mean, WGIB. Okay. Yeah, I answered it. So I was bad. And so, but I let him know my passion was I wanted to be on the air. So he did a weekend jazz show, and he hated working on weekends. So he's like, look, do you know anything about jazz? I'm like, do I ever? And thank you, Harley, my oldest brother, turned me on to jazz. And he gave me his collection. And I had a show Sunday afternoon. I don't remember how long. It was long, like 6 hours, but it was the 6 happiest hours of my week. And from there, I went back to Chapel Hill to CHL, where I was part of a news magazine. And from there, I went to Foxy 107 in Durham, where I was in sales. So I was an account executive. And then from Foxy 107, I went to WRAL in Raleigh first, AC station. Back to, I think, Foxy 107 in sales. Then back to WRAL for sales. And realized sales was just not for me. I found passion in creating the commercials, but I was a one-woman shop. I could go out and I could sell it, and then I could create my own commercial. So then I realized I don't want to do that. I'd rather just create commercials. So I go to WQOK, which was 97.5, and the station hadn't even signed on yet. I walk in, I meet the owners. They hadn't hired anybody. I think they had an engineer, and I knew the engineer because he had worked at the station in Chapel Hill. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to be production director. This is all yours. So then they bring in Vinnie Brown, who went on to be the program director at KISS. And we had such a great staff there. I did a weekend jazz show. I was the production director, and then I decided I wanted more. So I found out that WPG in Charlotte, which is really where I wanted to be in the big market, At the time, it was market number 42. And that's where my friends listened because I grew up outside of Charlotte. So I wanted to go to that station. So I put together an air check, and I did some research on the program director. I found out, you know, I could get this job if I go in and nail the interview, which I did. And I got the job. And it was Michael Saunders, who is at iHeart in Houston, and I think he has Detroit too now. So he gave me my first music director job. He taught me selector, and that was the beginning of my programming trajectory. So I left there and went across the street to a pop station. Have you noticed how many formats I've already done by this time? I'm not even 28 yet. All right. Oh, wow. I told you. Let's get to, okay. Anyway, so then I went to KISS 102. Then I went to 100.3 Jams in Dallas, which was hip hop. I became assistant program director, music director there. Came to New York to WBLS, where I became the music director. I left there and went to Philadelphia to Power 99, where I became the operations manager. And then I was there for a couple of years before they made me director of urban programming for AM/FM, which is now iHeartMedia. After I left there, I went to the record business, and I came back to radio at Radio 1 Philadelphia, where I was operations manager and oversaw 3 formats there, which was urban AC, urban, hip-hop, and gospel. And then I left there and went to New York and was the program director of Power 105 in New York. And then I'm like, I don't want to be a program director anymore. So I went to Light FM, which is an AC station, and I am the most listened to radio personality in the country that is non-syndicated. So I reach more people every day than anybody else.
And that
is the AC format. So, Tammy, yes, it doesn't have to be one format.
No.
Keep looking.
radio transient, professional radio transient.
And have a
Helen Little.
podcast.
Thank you, thank you. Tony Gray.
Sorry, took so long.
Okay, Sam, so I'm going to make this brief because I got
Oh,
a
that's
flight.
cool. I understand. Bro's got a flight.
The early personalities that I listened to that I was influenced by, 2 people, Yvonne Daniels, who did late nights on WLS. I grew up right outside of St. Louis, Missouri, but WLS at the time, AM station, was a 50,000 watt clear channel station that you could hear all across the country. So I grew up listening to Yvonne Daniels and then Bill Bailey. Those were the 2 influential air personalities for me as a kid growing up.
Thank you very much. That's Tony, very concise and right to the point, and that's who he is.
Oh, and let me say this, on the previous panel, they gave respect to the owners. Mr. Lewis, a great black owner over the course of his lifetime. Nothing but respect for Kathy Hughes and what she has built with Radio 1. The Percy Sutton and what Hal Jackson did with inner city broadcasting. There were, as you mentioned earlier, it's not just the people that are on the air. It's what they did for the people that worked in sales, that worked in traffic, that worked in all areas of the radio station, of those radio stations that they own, in terms of training and moving up the ladder for black executives in our field. So,
All right, Tony
thank you.
Gray. Thank you, Tony.
And I would say that Tony, very humble, very modest, but
Very.
very powerful and influential in black radio for decades.
Decades. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks for
Go get your
inviting me.
plane. We appreciate
Okay,
you.
I'll grab the plane. Thank you.
I know we'll be on the phone this weekend, I know.
Just real quickly, you know, as many names as you hear, there are so many names that have not been mentioned. You know, I grew up in D.C. where it was Gene the Rockstar Phillips and Wes Party Johnson, and you know, I went to Boston and there was, you know, Steve Crumley, the 7th son, and I tried the whole name thing and it didn't work out for me. So, but growing up in D.C., the one that did it for me, really kind of, you know, stoked this thing for me was Donnie Simpson. You know, Donnie came here from Detroit, and I mean, it was just smooth radio. The music, the imaging, the voices on the air. You know, he had Candy Shannon, who was an amazing personality. Loved listening to Candy growing up. So, but definitely Donnie Simpson is the one who kind of turned me in or turned me out to radio, so to speak. Okay.
Well, there you go. You heard a lot of names, and I'm supposed to actually wrap this up. I hate doing it. And I'm glad you mentioned Candy Shannon, by the way. I heard her in Detroit on the old Cowboy, Gene Autry. It was a like MOR station when I first heard her. So,
I
yeah,
got
next
one
thing I
more
know she's
comment.
here. Huh?
Can I get one more
Sure.
comment? What I'd like to say is everyone envisions a different way of getting into broadcasting. And I would like to strongly suggest that you not lose yourself in pursuit of that goal, because you will find all types of tests that test your integrity and respectability. And I will advise that you hold true to yourself. You know, I'll give you a couple of quick examples. I remember when when I first got into radio, I interviewed at a station, and they just flat out told me, we don't have women on the air. You can be a receptionist. Were my feelings hurt? Yeah. Did I let it stop me? No. Then I was, I interviewed at another station. I'm like, well, do you want to hear an air check? Because that's what I thought was proper procedure. The PD said, well, you can read, can't you? Okay, I can do that. And then I got another situation where at KKSS, there was some politics going on between Bernie Hayes and some other jocks there, and it got really nasty and made the front page of the black newspaper. And our general manager at the time put me into a situation where he wanted me to tell who was doing what. Well, I knew who was doing what, but I urge you to always keep self-decency about yourself. I'm a student at HBCU. I'm not giving up my black people to tell you something, to put a blame on something, when you're supposed to be running this organization. So the next day, as opposed to giving anybody up, I submitted my letter of resignation so we could draw that part to a close. And I'll never forget the general manager, he refused to accept it and said, oh, I was just testing you. So I share that lesson to have you understand there will be plenty of tests in your quest, but retain who you are. Remember where you come from and what you stand for, and that way you'll have peace with yourself as you go through your career path.